We've come to look at what's going to be one of the biggest community arts projects in Europe. It's been designed by one of the world's hottest architects, but it's not in Berlin, it's not in Paris, it's in the heart of West Bromwich, and that's just for starters. Also tonight, as The Incredibles hits British cinemas, are computer images killing traditional animation? One of Britain's greatest artists marks his new book with a look back on a life in pictures. We judge the Whitbread Book Award shortlists early and come up with our own winners. And The Mountain That Came In From the Cold, novelist Glenn Patterson rediscovers a forbidden landscape. Welcome to The Culture Show. Behind me, an incredible £40 million project is taking shape. It's an ambitious building. It's been designed by Will Alsop, who's one of the most highly rated architects around. And in this enormous space, there are going to be studios and galleries, which are going to be filled with art created for and by the people of West Bromwich. But is this idea inspired or insane? We asked the team and the architect to give us an exclusive preview.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Famous for his bold colours and abstract forms, Will Alsop's buildings are unmistakable.
I'd stand over here by me if I were you. I like sort of mess,
His ideas often evolve in unusual and messy ways.
Actually, it's getting better, isn't it? Do you live in that?
I think I would. And his unconventional approach to architecture has won him a string of commissions around the world.
Yes, okay, there's your terrace, look. Here's a tree. And then in the summer, you push the whole kitchen outside. Now, I wouldn't have thought of that if I hadn't done that. That's the point.
Here in Britain, he's best known for creating the Peckham Library, winner of the Sterling Prize for Architecture in 2000. And this, The Public, is Alsop's biggest British commission to date. Half of the project's £40 million cost has been funded by the National Lottery. But unlike similar projects in Cardiff or Newcastle, The Public isn't in a major city. It's being built in the middle of a small town in the middle of the Black Country. This is West Bromwich. Ravaged by industrial decline and butchered by planners in the 60s and 70s, West Brom doesn't have much of a town centre left, let alone a cultural heart.
It's a lively town, but it's a bit drab.
And the locals don't quite know what to make of Alsop's latest creation.
Well, I just think it looks like a tin hut. I think it's most unsightly. What is it supposed to be?
Looks like a factory unit. It's more like a B&Q warehouse. In fact, most people around here think it's the extension to the existing one.
But when it's complete in a year's time, the building, resplendent in dark purple and bright pink, will look very different.
Oh, I love this space.
And transforming the town with a spectacular art centre just like this has long been the dream of one local woman. 30 years ago, Sylvia King started running community arts projects in the West Brom area. And she became so good at it, she now heads The Public, the arts charity behind this vast £40 million project.
Verity, these
are the jelly beans.
I've been waiting to see these jelly beans.
And this wildly ambitious project would never have happened without her.
This is the sock.
Yep, the sock.
Yes, it's shaped like a sock. The architects team and ourselves are always inventing names for all different bits, hence the sock and the rock and the pebble and the lily pads and so on.
Just as revolutionary as the design of this building is the idea behind it. This huge space is going to be filled with art created for and by the local community.
Where we are at the moment is right in the middle, really, of the main lobby, the ground floor of the building. Now, this incredible shape that you can see spiralling round the building is our ramp, and it's all oak, beautiful oak, and all along the edges there are these different things to do.
Sylvia's dream has always been to create a building that will cater for everything, from painting classes to interactive video making to huge arts projects involving the whole town. Effectively, this will be the grandest village hall in Europe.
What it is kind of a thimbleful of the work we do outside with the community. It's a little taster about how you can be creative yourself.
This philosophy of public involvement has driven the whole design process from the very beginning. When he started on the project 6 years ago, the first thing Will Alsop did was to draw a table and then get the people of West Brom to draw all over it. And through this process, the design of the building began to emerge.
Essentially, it comes down to one thing: is if you can get people to draw and do what I do, that's how you discover things. I had no preconception when about this job when I went there, none whatsoever.
So you didn't turn up with any drawings or models?
Oh no. No, what I made a model of or a drawing of, that was the whole point. It was about a process of discovery. Not designing, it's discovering what this building wants to be.
Given that West Brom has never had a building quite like this before, are you worried at all about, alienating people or what people are going to think?
No, I'm not too worried about that, because a lot of the people have been involved in this design who are from West Brom. I assume that they like it, because if they don't like it, they can blame themselves, of course.
It looks like a double-decker shoebox with blobby windows.
You can see that it is an iconic building.
I think that the whole idea was misconceived from the start.
People are talking about this project now.
Anything to do with art, I enjoy, but I genuinely feel that this is not in the right place.
Most people agree West Brom needs something, but is a huge arts project like this right for the town?
We could have put the money and the space to better use.
You could have spent all that money on swimming baths or youth clubs for us lot to go to.
It's a good thing that they've done, and they've actually put some money into something decent for a change.
It's going to be something unique, kind of like an extravaganza that's kind of set in the heart of this old working class town.
I can see that building really putting West Bromwich on the map.
This project is a huge risk, but after working for 30 years in the area, Sylvia King is convinced it's right for West Brom.
People around here, they don't call it art or culture, but their creative activity that they do, that they're involved in, there's all sorts of things that happen. And because of our bedrock of work over those years, and our way of engaging people, and making it all really accessible and people feeling they're not involved in an arts activity, I think they'll come, because that's what we'll still offer. Here we are, in, if you like, a building I've always dreamed about, but it's real now.
I bet you have to pinch yourself, don't you, sometimes?
It is, it feels like a dream.
The coolest architect going, Will Alsop.
I know, and what a dream come true that is.
Yeah.
How fantastic. I do have to pinch myself some days.
The public will open its doors to the people of West Bromwich in 2006, and we'll be back then to see how they're getting on. Now, the latest cartoon blockbuster from the people who made Finding Nemo is going to arrive in UK cinemas in a week or so. It's called The Incredibles. It's about a family of superheroes, and its computer-generated images set new standards for impact and realism. Similar cartoons have had big box office success recently, but so much so that some people now worry that traditional animation, using things like drawing and models, may soon become an endangered species. Mark Kermode investigates.
Showtime. This is the face of modern animation, bursting with stunning visuals and eye-popping action sequences, courtesy of the computer-generated or CG technology which today's audiences have come to expect. But things weren't always this way.
Once upon a time, cartoons were drawn by hand to create such timeless screen characters as Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Disney's first full-length animated feature, which won the hearts of audiences back in 1937. But in recent years, such traditional arts have been eclipsed by complex computer graphics, with companies like DreamWorks and Pixar using state-of-the-art 3D animation to turn films like Toy Story, Shrek and Shark Tale into hits which generate hundreds of millions of dollars. Pixar's latest 3D epic, The Incredibles, is expected to repeat this success, and it's an expectation which places a heavy burden on the shoulders of director Brad Bird.
There's one part of me that goes, if this thing makes $1 less in its opening weekend than Nemo's 10 bazillion thousand quadrillions, that, you know, oh, it's the beginning of the end for Pixar, oh, they're going down, you know, and, you know, I can't do anything about that. The only thing that I can do is make the kind of movie that I want to see and hope that other people agree with it. We did the 10 hardest things to do in CG in plentiful supply. It's the amount of hard stuff we did. I can't name one thing. We did hair and fire and water and clothing and humans and all these things that you're supposed to avoid, and we did lots of it. You can control tiny little movements in CG in a way that is wonderful if you work with it. It's also wonderful to be able to move the camera in space and to mimic lens selection and stuff like that. So I think it's a fantastic medium.
Others, however, are not so impressed. Legendary Japanese animator Miyazaki, creator of the international hit Spirited Away, has been quoted as claiming that Hollywood studios are abandoning artistry for computing. Meanwhile, Sylvain Chomet, the French animator behind the award-winning Belleville Rendezvous, remains a passionate advocate of the hand-drawn 2D arts.
2D animation has got something more poetic about it. And definitely I find it much more magical to see a drawing moving than a digital character moving. There's now a problem with the fact that people don't draw anymore, and that's basically my main concern.
If Hollywood producers don't support hand-drawn 2D animation, what will happen?
Well, it's just going to dry out. I mean, there won't be no more originality there. Well, I don't think we should base everything we're doing in Europe according to the Americans.
Like it or not, in recent years computer graphics have usurped the 2D hand-drawn arts, with Disney recently closing down their traditional animation departments to make way for the 3D computer graphic productions which they believe will become future money spinners. It's a move which has dismayed animation expert Peter Parr.
What we're seeing now is a company, a big organisation, respected company organisation like the Disney organisation, saying that Home on the Range is the last 2D feature animation that they will ever produce. And what happens is that the businessmen walk through the door and start turning off the light boxes. That, in my opinion, really is a great mistake. There is a very distinct lack, actually, of understanding of the process and how the process works, how people think. People think through drawing, they express themselves, communicate through drawing.
And it's not just drawing that's under threat. Even the ancient art of stop-frame model animation is being surpassed by computer graphics, with Wallace and Gromit creators Aardman embarking on a digital feature with DreamWorks.
The thing that the Aardman productions are known for is fantastic cinematic lighting. I mean, they are lit beautifully. I am trepidatious, I confess. Can't quite define what it is, but some of that classic quality will get lost in a computer.
I can understand why you'd be worried about the loss of the craft skills which give you the look and the cinematic quality and editing. Mainly, I think, because in the computer world, those specialisms don't seem to be necessary to the people that are doing it.
But Aardman think they've found a way to translate their traditional skills into the computer world.
Clearly, they've got a fantastic toolkit at DreamWorks. And given that they would like to learn perhaps some of our skills in terms of cinematography, there's basically a bit of a swapping going on here. Is there stuff that we can say, well, actually, there's a more interesting way to, say, light your stuff or texture, or simply to stage it.
Even Sylvain Chomet has a CG movie in the pipeline. But for his current project, The Illusionist, which uses animation to bring inimitable French comedian Jacques Tati back to life, Chomet insists that only traditional 2D skills can do the character justice.
It's very close to magic in a way. And I don't think that you can do that in 3D. You can really bring the magic and the art of the mime as well. I think it's a media which is basically more sensitive in many ways.
What would you get from that hand-drawn Tati that you wouldn't get from a 3D CG tatty?
You get imperfection, and I think CGI so far has just been showing perfection and trying to look something really neat, and I think that is lacking really of humanity.
I love looking at hand-drawn animation, and I think it looks a way that it has a graphic pleasure to it that is all its own. For the moment, everybody's crying CG and thinking that if you take any idea and put it through a computer, it's suddenly a good idea. I think that that's not going to last very long, and I think we're going to see a lot of lousy CG films, and some good ones, but a lot of lousy ones.
It's clear that there are real worries about the increasing domination of computer graphics. My own hunch is that the future lies in the fusion of hand-drawn and CG skills, with animators like Japan's Oshii Mamoru combining these techniques to stunning effect in films like Innocence, and Sylvain Chomet using computers to enhance rather than supersede traditional animation.
I could have imagined to do Very Rendezvous without computers. I'm very happy to be a director now because I've got this technology.
I think they simply will coexist. I don't see why they shouldn't coexist, actually.
The future lies in blending any medium and all mediums in different combinations that we can't even imagine.
We're superheroes. What can happen?
Oh, my back! That was Mark Kermode. The Incredibles opens in UK cinemas from the 26th of November, and you can see what the critics make of the film tomorrow night on Newsnight Review, 11 o'clock on BBC Two. Still to come tonight, Andrew Marr comes face to face with artist David Hockney. And the 14th century treasure that's destined to leave Britain unless money can be found to save it. Time now, though, for our roundup of other stories making the news in arts and culture this week. Here's a quick preview of the first permanent architecture gallery to open in the UK. The Victoria and Albert Museum in London and the Royal Institute of British Architects have created a unique exhibition of rare models and drawings.
What's different about this gallery is that it looks at architecture in the round. Quite literally, in fact, because what you can see here are not only models and drawings, but also fragments of buildings. And so this perhaps is the first gallery to try and look at architecture in this way.
On Sunday, commemoration services will be held at the Cenotaph in London and all over the country to mark Remembrance Day. This year is the 90th anniversary of the start of the First World War. Watch out, Edinburgh. Manchester is launching an international arts and culture festival in July 2007. It'll be held every 2 years, and the festival director is Alex Poots, currently head of contemporary arts at English National Opera.
I don't believe that such a festival has ever been created like this before. That's because it grows from the fabric of Manchester, which is the original modern city. And so for a festival to present new work, new commissions and new ideas is, I think, the first time ever.
Temple Bar, the 300-year-old gateway to the City of London, was unveiled next to St Paul's Cathedral this week. It's believed by some to have been designed by Sir Christopher Wren, and it's back in the capital after 100 years of exile in Hertfordshire.
When the weather starts to hone it down, we can see again the new statues, slightly restored, but very much in the way that they were preserved. I think it's a thrilling achievement.
Musical comedy The Producers opened to a standing ovation at the Theatre Royal in London on Tuesday, despite replacing Richard Dreyfuss at the last minute with Broadway lead Nathan Lane. David Hockney is probably one of the most well-known and best-loved British artists alive today. His vivid and richly coloured pictures are as likely to be seen on sitting room walls as they are in the art galleries of the world. This week, a new collection of his work spanning 50 years is due to be published, and that includes a portrait of Andrew Marr. The Culture Show sent Andrew to meet him.
"50 years ago exactly, David Hockney sold his first painting. It was an oil portrait of his dad, and he got £10 for it. Since then, he has produced a steady flow of images: drawings, oils, watercolours, photography, computer-aided drawings, opera sets. He's made naturalistic pictures, sharp, sardonic portraits, semi-abstract paintings. His works have been popular pin-ups, reproduced for millions of walls in flats and houses, and they've changed hands for vast sums. Through decades, when the art world's been dominated by conceptual artists and video art, David Hockney has maintained a dogged belief in drawing, making marks by eye and hand. Much of that time he's spent in California or travelling the world. In recent years, he's been back more in Britain, where he started. Now, 50 years since that first sale in Leeds, he's published a new collection of his pictures in a book carefully chosen, page by page, to show his range and his preoccupations.
It's a book full of Western material objects. You love objects, you love things. And in a way, I wondered if it was a sort of record of Western man at the moment. It's a book of sensation and enjoyment and consumption through the eyes.
Through the eyes. It's like, I was in Palermo about 4 months ago with John Spike, who's an art historian, lives in Florence. We're walking down the street and he turns to me and he said, "This is the richest country in the world." I said, "Yeah, if you've got eyes, yes, it is." It is, absolutely.
It's poor materially, but it's just crammed with
if you've
beautiful
got eyes,
things.
Yes, it's incredibly rich. Yeah. Well, I've got eyes. I like looking.
You jump within a second or two by turning the page from David Hockney's drawings of the 1970s to semi-abstract oil paintings from the 1980s to what you've been doing recently. What is the underlying artistic personality that connects them?
You mean the continuities?
Yes.
Space, attitudes to space, attitudes to how you depict meaning, therefore a camera can be involved. Subject matter, because it recurs at different times, so you could change it and bring it back.
Certainly the same friends, records of intimacy, I suppose.
Same house. Perhaps I don't look outside enough anymore, or I just stay in a house. Whereas here in Yorkshire, I'm painting, I'm going out, actually. Cameras can't do this, it can't get the space, can't do this. So you've got to actually look at it and paint it. I came to the conclusion that I didn't want to look through a camera anymore. I see what that did. It put too many edges for me.
And does that mean that we are on the edge of a new period of drawing and painting again?
Well, I think what is happening, I think we are on the edge of the photograph beginning to look a bit different. I mean, to a certain extent, if you flick through the TV sometimes, I think The Simpsons looks the most real. I think we'll think it's less and less real, and actually perhaps look at the brush to tell us more.
In Victorian times, lots of people were taught to draw. It was something you were almost expected to be able to do, or a lot of people were. Do you think that we have lost a great deal by losing the habit of drawing in society now?
I'm assuming it'll come back, actually. Everything begins on a drawing board, as they say, and it still will. I mean, and the hand can do things. I mean, for instance, I've worked, you work on a computer, you've got pretty good with brushes, but not like a real brush. And
you haven't got the wrist. You haven't got the...
I mean, the subtlety that can be put in that way, I mean, it just can't.
I suppose what would really shock or surprise somebody who knew your work from, say, 10 years ago and suddenly opened this book would be the predominance of watercolour.
In oil paint, remember, you can cover up marks. In watercolour, essentially, you don't, meaning every trace is left, and that too makes it more interesting.
A higher risk in some ways.
Well, yes.
Each time you're starting again, it's a...
Yeah, it is, but that's exciting. I mean, that's part of the excitement.
One of the watercolours in this book is the one that you did of me, and it was I find it a very intense experience. I find it was surprisingly hard work being painted, because you're never looked at by anybody as intently as when you're being painted. I've never seen myself quite that way, and yet I knew it was me. It was psychologically very, very accurate. And I wondered, when you're painting people, how many of them come away disconcerted?
A lot, I think. I mean, I'm assuming I'm not flattering, so I don't actually ask. And I do tend to draw a few people quite a lot of times.
Yes.
Now, with, say, Maurice Payne, sometimes I draw him, and Gregory said, "My God, you've just stripped him of everything in his skin today, looking at that."
The great portrait painters never flatter. I'm amazed by how powerful people in the past, popes, you know, bishops, dukes, allowed themselves to be portrayed with such pitiless realism.
Well, the greatest of all is that Velasquez Pope, isn't it? I mean, no photograph could ever be. I've looked at, I mean...
It's a scary picture.
It's the mouth, the way the mouth is, the eyes, it's fantastic. And I see a photograph couldn't be like that, because it couldn't get the layers. You know, when they did the picture, our picture of David Beckham, you know, for the National Portrait Gallery. What it is lots and lots of pictures of David Beckham, but strung out in one single line, and it's 1 hour. Whereas Lucian Freud put actually 120 hours layered that way into the picture.
Of you?
Yes.
Of you,
which is why it made it an infinitely more interesting picture, actually. It's a different way of looking at the time in it.
There's wonderful drawings that you've got in the book that you did of yourself. Are also your account of being alive at a certain age.
Yes. These are drawn in a hotel. I mean, to do that, of course, you've got to do that, then stop doing it as you draw. You can't keep it, then you have to put it back.
Put it back again.
I keep drawing myself at different times, and they all look a bit different.
Some people would, as it were, tell the story of your earlier life as an escape from the austerity and puritanism and greyness and lack of colour of Britain at that time, certainly in the 50s, and then you go over to California.
Now I'm escaping the puritanism.
I was going to ask.
California.
the sort of anti-smoking, anti-fun culture, is that right?
Well, I'm probably drawn, you know, I'm at a certain age, you're probably drawn to your roots a bit. I always did find the landscape here in Yorkshire very, very harmonious. They're not hedges, and you can get big skies.
How do you find the light compared with, I mean, it's much more diffuse, obviously.
The light's changing every minute. I mean, the last picture in the book, for instance, it was a day in April, very rainy day. I'm driving on this little road and I stop and I see the puddles that are white, shining with the reflection of the thing. And that's marvelous. So I draw some little notes and go back and then paint this with big brushes. And at the end of the day, Robin rings up from Bradford. Said, terrible day today, wasn't it? I said, well, it was okay, actually, it wasn't terrible. He said, well, wasn't it raining there? I said, well, yes, it was raining, actually, but I went out and actually I looked around and it was ravishingly beautiful, I thought.
You called it lovely day with puddles.
A lovely day, so I mean, but everybody else would have told me it was a terrible day, but they weren't really looking at it, that's all. And if you looked at it, actually, it was very beautiful, because you were alive in it.
David Hockney's new book is called Hockney's Pictures. It's published by Thames and Hudson and costs £20. Still to come on The Culture Show tonight, as the Whitbread shortlists are announced, we predict the winners. And we hear the story of the mountain that's been out of bounds for 30 years. But first, a unique and largely unknown English treasure called the Macclesfield Salter. Now, this is a tiny, beautifully illustrated book of Psalms, which was created in East Anglia in the 14th century, but which recently sold to the Getty Museum in Los Angeles for nearly £2 million. So until yesterday, it was due to leave the UK and go to its new owners. But the Culture Show has now learnt that the government is going to extend the initial ban that it put on the book's export for another 3 months. So the people who want the Macclesfield Salter to stay in this country have now got until February to raise the money. Zina Sarawiwa tells the story.
Coming towards us in a custom-made box, a tiny object at the centre of a serious controversy. Locked away in Sotheby's, it's owned by Americans, but wanted by the British. The subject of this transatlantic tussle? It's something very rare and quite enchanting, and it lies between the leaves of this tatty old binding. This is the Macclesfield Salter, a beautifully illustrated manuscript of Psalms produced around 1320. Today, nearly 700 years after it was created, it's making its television debut.
This is actually about our national identity. It's about the history of these islands in the broadest possible sense. This isn't just a religious document. It's social, historical, political, and it's fun.
It would have had many uses. First and foremost, it would have been the devotional book of the owner. You recite your daily prayers out of it. The Psalms were the most commonly used texts for private devotion and prayer. But then, of course, you would use it for entertainment and fun, your own private entertainment, because you hold it that close and you enjoy the images, or you might share it with a very close person.
Many of the brilliantly worked images are a long way from devout. Here, a man urinates into a pot, held for him by a conveniently placed giant. There, a woman fends off the advances of a man with a suggestively angled sword. Then there's the enormous skate chasing a man across the page. The story of the scrap over the Salter begins here at Sherborne Castle in Oxfordshire, the home of the Earl of Macclesfield. It was discovered by an auctioneer cataloguing his library.
The man from Sotheby's came down the stairs with this book, and I was sitting in the kitchen and came in. I could tell there was something up from his body language, and then he produced it out of its box and we started looking at it, and it was obviously something that I'd never seen the like of before.
You might not associate East Anglia with cutting-edge art these days, but in the first half of the 14th century, things were different. The work being produced in this part of the country at that time, including the Macclesfield Salter, was on a par with the very best of its European contemporaries.
This is the last point at which painting in this country can hold its head high internationally. And I'm not exaggerating if I say you've really got to wait for the time of Turner and Constable, some 400 or 500 years later, to hit that sort of international standing of British painting.
There's little of the medieval left in the Norfolk town of Galston-on-Sea, apart from St Andrew's Church. But scholars believe that the Macclesfield Salter is connected with Galston, along with two other such outstanding books of Psalms, both of which contain dedications to this very church. One of them, the Galston Salter, is in the British Library. The other, the Douay Salter, was virtually destroyed in World War I. The Macclesfield Salter contains no such dedication, but there are images of Edmund, King of East Anglia, and Andrew, patron saint of this church.
I think we can be perfectly certain that it was produced for Galston. Whether the artist was trained locally remains to be studied, and this is why it's such a great opportunity to have this manuscript come to life so unexpectedly.
The Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge wanted to buy the Salter to add to their medieval collection, but they couldn't raise the money in time for the auction in June. In the end, the Salter was bought by the American Getty Museum for £1.7 million. But in order to take an object like the Salter out of the UK, you need an export licence. And that means that hope hasn't run out here at the Fitzwilliam. The government's Export Reviewing Committee has stated that all efforts must be made to keep the Macclesfield Salter within the UK, and they placed a temporary bar on its export. This bar was due to run out yesterday, but the Culture Show has discovered that it's been extended for another 3 months. The Salter will only stay in the UK if the Fitzwilliam Museum can raise the money to reimburse the Getty. They've applied to the National Heritage Memorial Fund, and they're getting help from the Art Fund, a charity which has pledged £500,000, but there'll still be a shortfall. This, the Rokeby Venus, in the National Gallery, is the first painting the Art Fund saved by public appeal. Tonight, they're launching another, to save the Salter.
Today we go live. We're asking the public to reach into their pockets to help us secure this great masterpiece, and it's with their support, and only with their support, that we're going to be able to achieve the goal of buying it and keeping it in this country. And we're counting on them to recognise what a wonderful object this is, and there's just one chance. This is it. Otherwise it's going to go. It'll be in California.
The Getty didn't want to be interviewed, but they did say they respect the British export laws. If the money is raised before the deadline in February, the leaves of the Salter will be taken out of their poor binding and displayed at the Fitzwilliam Museum in a gallery all of their own.
And if you'd like to make a contribution to the Save the Salter appeal, you can do so by going to our website, bbc.co.uk/culture show, or by going to page 623 of CFAX. Now this week, the shortlist for the Whitbread Prize was announced, one of Britain's major book prizes, even bigger than the Man Booker, in 5 different categories. We won't know who the winner is until next year, but the Culture Show couldn't wait that long, so we've asked 5 former Whitbread judges to have a read and come up with their recommendations. Lawrence Pollard reports.
Writers in the limelight, awards, shortlists. The book prize season seems to last all year, with an ever-lengthening list of categories, specialisms and sponsors, not all of whom seem obviously connected to the world of books.
Take Whitbread, for example. They no longer make the beer that they used to brew here, but they do sponsor Britain's most wide-ranging book prize. As prize sponsors, they get some classy culture. The publishers get a whole load of publicity, and the authors get some much-needed attention.
And what do you get? Well, an X-ray of the best of British writing today. We're going to give you an inside track on what the greatest books around at the moment are. But the Whitbread isn't a simple sprint race. You could say it's a literary knockout. There are 5 shortlisted categories: biography, poetry, novel, first novel, children's book. Each category sends a winner to the next round. And then, from these 5 finalists, the book of the year is chosen. But you don't have to wait until January next year and the official announcement. We're going to tell you who should win tonight. We had 5 former Whitbread judges standing by, waiting for our delivery man, that's me. They had 5 days before the shortlist was officially announced to read the books and choose the best ones for us. So, time to stand and deliver.
Hello, how are you?
I'll make some coffee and we'll go on up to the sitting room.
Oh, V.S. Pritchett.
Louis de Bernier's, that's going to ruffle some feathers.
This is good. Leontia Flynn, book called These Days. That's good.
Now, you can't judge a book by its cover, but how about some first impressions?
Well, I think we can tell right away that my prediction was correct here. There it is, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke, and I'm looking forward to this very much.
Ah, Booker winner. Alan Hollinghurst's Line of Beauty. Okay. And another winner, Orange Prize winner, Andrea Levy's Small Island.
Anne Cassidy's Looking for JJ. Now, this is a very topical book because it's about a girl who kills a school friend. Serious stuff.
This is an absolutely classic biography, the Stephen Spender. Great professor writes it, authorised biography. Every damn jot and tittle of his life will be in here. I'll know what he had for lunch. Fine.
Michael Simmons Roberts. This is a book called Corpus, which haven't read. Sometimes described as a religious poet, which would put me off as a reader because I don't really want to read too many poems about God.
And straight off, there's a really strong historical theme, isn't there? I mean, you've got the Louis de Berniers, which is, decline of the Ottoman Empire, rise of Turkey.
I haven't heard of Richard Collins, I must confess. And
First impressions from the cover, what do you think?
Lyrical, poetic, probably slightly depressing.
Meg Rosoff's How I Live Now. It's such a difficult book to describe.
Another new first collection, Matthew Hollis. It's got a quote from Simon Armitage on the back, so must be good. Yeah.
We're missing a true historical biography, that is to say a bodice rippery type, and by God we're missing contemporary women and women authors.
So much for first impressions. It was now time to test their prejudices with some closer reading.
I really like these thrillers of the old tradition, sort of sensation fiction with this sense of the domestic uncanny. Jackson, this classic detective figure, is someone who'll try and tidy up the loose ends, only he can't tidy up the loose ends of his own life, so I wonder how it's all going to end.
No shame, no fear. Reading this book just brings over terribly strong feelings of how brave the heroine of this story is and how much courage she had, and it makes you think about your own political positions and whether you'd have the courage to stand up against the authorities.
John Fuller's got this great gift of being able to move from very formal, sort of regulated poems with metre and rhyme to things which are looser and more descriptive, and some of the poems in the book which are sort of theorising, I suppose, I'm less interested in.
V.S. Pritchett, I have to say I had trouble with this from the start. It opens with how much he despised and disliked his parents. Not a good start for me. But I ploughed on and I learned a lot about a very small man's very small detailed life.
Now, this appears to be a war story, but there isn't actually any war in it. The whole story is about a retreat from the pursuing Turkish troops. The maze is not actually a real maze, it's a maze I'm beginning to realise inside the heads of each and every one of the characters.
So, after 5 days, 6,840 pages and 9.5 kilos of reading, we went back to our judges for their considered view of the shortlists.
Three of the books, particularly John Fuller's book, Matthew Hollis's book and Michael Simmons Roberts' book, all very nostalgic. That's not true in Leontia Flynn's case. You get that sort of excitement of somebody running around a museum of modern art and laughing at things. You know, there's an irreverence about it.
The Jabez is for people who liked the story of who wrote the Oxford English Dictionary, read it once and give it to a friend because you're never going to read it again. The Guy, however, had me captivated this time around just as it had me captivated the first. It is a page-turner.
Suzanne Fletcher is only 24, and I do think it's an amazing achievement for someone at that age. I wasn't that keen on when it started, but as it went on, it has got a wonderful atmosphere. She's got a very clear ear for dialogue. The characters are very convincing and absorbing. Jonathan Strange and Miss Norrell, and I have to confess, I haven't finished this, but I am loving it. It is an incredible piece of work. I mean, it's a book about magic, but it's a book that has magic.
All four of these authors respect their readers. And when you say, you know, they're dark and difficult subjects, or that it's hard material, or would all children enjoy them, I don't think these writers are writing for all children. What's wonderful about How I Live Now, it's very economical. The writing is spare, the storytelling is spare, and so you as a reader are adding a great deal to it.
They're all books about Englishness in one way or another. So with the Andrea Levy, you've got the sense of how do Britons, black and white, live together with this study of two couples. With the Alan Hollinghurst, you have a different period. It's a decadent novel of a decadent era. The Louis de Berniers was the biggest surprise for me, and is not beautifully achieved coherently. And that seems to me part of what's interesting and challenging about it.
Oh, very well, but who should be the winners?
My choice for the Whitbread Poetry Prize would be Michael Simmons Roberts' book, Corpus.
My pick for the Whitbread biography category, My Heart Is My Own, The Life of Mary Queen of Scots by John Guy.
My nomination for the Whitbread First Novel Award is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke.
The winner of this year's Whitbread Children's Book of the Year should be Meg Rosoff for How I Live Now.
So my choice for the Whitbread Novel Award 2004 is the immensely readable Louis de Berniers' Birds Without Wings.
So there you have it, the best 5 books of the year, at least according to our judges. Now, the official Whitbread judges won't be making their choices public for a couple of months, but if you want to make your mind up, here's the best place to start.
The winners of the different categories will be announced in January next year. Now, time for our pick of what's around in the world of arts and culture. Starting with the latest films on national release this weekend, you get to choose between the long-awaited Bridget Jones sequel and Charles Dance's directorial debut, Ladies in Lavender. Mark Kermode has the Culture Show take.
While Bridget Jones' The Edge of Reason manages to raise a few chuckles despite being abysmally directed by Beeben Kidron, Charles Dance proves himself a dab hand behind the camera in the tweely entitled but actually rather endearing drama Ladies in Lavender, an excellent vehicle for the talents of Maggie Smith and Judi Dench. Or, if you fancy something with a little more kick, then the bonkers kung fu football comedy Shaolin Soccer is every bit as entertainingly nuts as it sounds.
We also liked the revealing approach to the masterpieces of French impressionist Edgar Degas at the National Gallery. Drafts and sketches are brought together with the latest imaging techniques to show the experimental and innovative nature of the artist's work. And in Glasgow, we recommend a collection of photographs of Nelson Mandela's life, which are on display at the Mitchell Library. Taken by the acclaimed South African photographer Peter Magubane, they chart Mandela's story over half a century. There's some good stuff at the London Jazz Festival, now in its 12th year. It runs from tomorrow until the 21st of November. Among the highlights are Nitin Sawhney performing new arrangements of his work, and a rare appearance by the highly rated saxophonist Steve Coleman on the 15th of November. Finally tonight, the city of Belfast is in a spectacular setting. It's surrounded by hills, but its highest peak, Divis Mountain, has been off limits for the past 30 years because the army's been using it as a surveillance point for the streets below. So it's become known not so much as a beauty spot, but actually as a symbol for the Troubles. But all of that is about to change. The Belfast writer Glenn Patterson remembers the mountain of his youth and imagines a mountain for the future.
Divis and its neighbour Black Mountain are responsible for a lot of things in Belfast. We get our weather from them. Yet for the past 3 decades they've been obscured by more than just clouds. They have, in effect, been no-go areas for Belfast citizens.
The army colonised the mountain. But not only did the army colonise it, but local mythology colonised it to a degree as well. You didn't know what you would find if you went up there.
The Ministry of Defence bought a bit of land on Black Mountain for a rifle range in the 1950s. By the 1970s, it had extended its occupation to 1,500 acres of mountaintop.
When I first came up here many, many years ago, the shock, and it was actually a shock, of coming across a wild, rugged, open countryside like this, so close to the city. It was on the verge, actually, of being unbelievable. It almost reminded us that there was a world outside the madness that was going on inside Belfast itself in the 1970s.
On the 16th of November, ownership of that mountain world will transfer to the National Trust, and the people of Northern Ireland will once again be able to walk on the summits without breaking the law.
What did you know about the mountain when you were growing up, or what did it mean to you?
Everyone in Belfast sees the Belfast Hills, sees Divis and the Black Mountain, but they were closed, they were inaccessible, they were in private ownership.
How did the National Trust get involved then in this process?
The MOD sort of reviewed their estates, and Divis and the Black Mountain became surplus to requirements. And we started to get involved, looked at it, and thought, yeah, this is really important piece of land, and it would be fantastic if it was in public ownership, held in trust.
John Betjeman once said there was a mountain at the end of every Belfast street. There was a mountain at the end of the street my mum was born in, off the Ballygomartin Road. During the Blitz of 1941, she and her family took to the hills at night for shelter.
If I started to tell you all the things that the mountain meant to me, I'd be a writer. But I mean, so I can't articulate. I have to use paint as my medium, and that's how I say what the mountain means to me, through paint. If you look over towards the east and the south, okay, it's quite nice and it's pretty, and you know that's countryside, but here it's right on top of you. You're enveloped by the sort of protective arms of those hills. They're protecting Belfast. So there's this primary school on the White Rock Road, St Aidan's I think it's called, and the boys were out playing football. The whole background of their lives and their parents' lives has been the Troubles. So there's this big mountain just looming over their playground in a maternal sort of way, and that's, maybe I was feeling maternal towards them, but I wanted that mountain to have that quality, that painting to have that quality.
It's incredible how much of a part of the development of a free space in a young life that mountain was. That's what it was about. It was free space in a young life. And a young life where space is restricted. We used to go up there before the Troubles at a time when it was clear and free. It was wild territory to us, but we saw it as a kind of space in which we were free to wander, be more mischievous than we would be at home, scramble over hedges and other people's fences, you know, tear our clothes, get dirty. You know, I didn't have to throw a brick through somebody's window to discharge frustration if I could go up there and run along the top of the hill and shout it at the wind.
During the 50s, at the height of the Cold War, the Army set up a telecommunications relay station, or as some people will still insist, a listening station at the top of Divis. Listening to the North Atlantic, that is, not the city down below. But when the Troubles began, a large army base was built in the lower slopes of Black Mountain, and the hills became part of a new climate of surveillance and suspicion.
I did a number of tours here in Belfast, and this mountain was an enormous asset to the security forces. The view was fantastic, and using some very sophisticated viewing equipment, we could see all sorts of things going on in various areas of the city where basically the opposition didn't realise that we could see them. Once we'd recognised someone, we could see them walking where they were going, we could sometimes see the house that they were going into, we could see the people that they were meeting and talking with. I never had that feeling that the people in the city must have, in that they look up here and they see somewhere that they can't go.
When the army settled there, people had already stopped going. It's not that you would have taken your girlfriend up and worried that the army were watching you through binoculars. Once the army were up there with their binoculars, there were, you know, you weren't inclined to go there with your girlfriend. Maybe some did, and maybe some of the soldiers saw more through their binoculars than they'd expected, you know.
For some people, trespass became a matter of principle.
I have always walked on the mountain in spite of the MOD, if you like, owning that particular part of the mountain. And sometimes it was a nuisance, obviously, because it became harassment at some stages. It reminded me of the cowboy pictures, you know. As soon as you appeared, they would have come down on their horses, except there was jeeps, surrounded you and all of this stuff here and asked you what you were doing.
It's hard to think that for the majority of people in this city, for practically everyone in this city, this has been a view that has been denied for, 30, 40 years?
What we're hoping to do is now that we can actually open it up and say, look, you're invited up here, you can now come in and see your city, see it laid out at your feet.
It's incredible actually, because given that this is such a divided city, and you can see some of the divisions from here, just to get this perspective, I mean, to what extent might that be one of the benefits of opening up this land?
It's a very hard benefit to measure, I suppose, but it does have that. It's bringing Belfast out of itself. It's bringing, the idea is to bring Belfast up and look back down at ourselves.
Sean O'Whalan wrote somewhat ambiguously that the hills were a reminder that you could get out of Belfast quickly. Some would say our problem has been that we don't get out enough. Belfast does not encourage roaming. This isn't a city where you can easily lose yourself. We spent the best part of 35 years painting ourselves into corners. Most of us have been getting by all this time with half a city. The temporary peace lines of 1969 solidified into walls, which in some places have turned into buffer zones.
The city down below is divided by peace walls. It's separated into clearly defined ghettos. People know where they are and they know the streets that they're safe to walk in. Up there's no division there. And in a sense, if division is your safety, if division is your protection, then you don't have it up there, you know.
It's been given back to the people, and that's so important. And whatever happened in the past is in the past now. We're looking into the future, and we know that the hills belong to the people of Belfast, to everyone.
One of the unfortunate things is so many people who have lived their whole lives in Belfast have never seen the views from Black Mountain or from Divis. So hopefully that will happen and people will come to Gyre and see the value of it.
On the day of the IRA ceasefire, a new peace line was begun in a Belfast park. 10 years on, it's still there. The worry has to be that the mountains will become another contested territory, that before long, one side or another will try to run up a flag.
When you go up into the hills, you leave your flags and emblems behind you. There are no flags up here, there are no emblems up here. It's an upland, it's a mountain.
People from the other community tended to see the Black Mountain and Divis as a place that was in West Belfast, and as such, they were afraid to go there. So, hopefully all of that there can disappear as more and more inroads are made towards building stability.
Walking around on Divis and Black Mountain is a geography lesson, it's a botany lesson, more than anything, it's a history lesson. You can see all too clearly the divisions of the recent past, but you can also see, if you look closely, tracks that existed before there was a north, a south, an east or west Belfast, when there was no more than the crossing of the River Farset that gives the city its name, Belfarstia. It would be naive to think that next week's handover will dramatically alter community relations here in Belfast. But it could just be that the mountains that have defined this city give us the space to reflect on how it might now be redefined. National trust, anybody?
The formal handover of Divis and Black Mountain happens next Tuesday, and they'll be open to the public in 2005. And that's all from The Culture Show this week. Good night. Next week, Robert Hughes reports from New York on the reopening of the Museum of Modern Art, and we look at the arguments over how to preserve the monastery of Cardross, Scotland's modernist ruin.